Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. It's time to have a chat about the ZTZ88B. Now, I spaded this vehicle recently. I actually got really fortunate and got a Talisman for it from the Warbond shop, or I got it from somewhere. I don't really know where I got it, but the fact is I was able to get a Talisman for this, and so the grind for it was actually a lot easier since, it doubles the amount of RP that you get. The vehicle is a pretty standard Chinese medium tank. You can definitely tell it's building off a lot of the kind of Type 69, Type 59 series, very similar to stuff like the ZTZ89D1, but it is way more upgraded than those in the areas that matter the most. The big one is the gun. It has the 105mm, the 88B 105T, which has access to a really nice APFSDS round for 9.0, and also a few other factors. The difference, by the way, between the ZTZ88A and the ZTZ88B, they're both at the same BR, but the A gets access to a VT shell for the main gun, and the B doesn't. That's the major difference between them. There isn't really anything else of note. And the VT shell, I suppose it's nice in certain areas, but most of the time it's not really that useful because the gun elevation isn't the best, and also it takes a long time to reload the shell, which is a huge deal for these types of guns. So that's a bit of a problem. Pretty much everything else is the same though. Like it really isn't that different. Now, I really enjoyed playing the 88B, and the reason for that is because there are certain upgrades on this vehicle that are not available on other Chinese vehicles. One of the problems with a lot of the kind of Type 69s, ZTZ59s, let's call them like the Soviet-based Chinese vehicles, is they really have a bad reverse, right? Now, the ZTZ88B doesn't have a great reverse, but it does improve it. So it goes from a 7.5 kilometers an hour to 8.9 kilometers an hour, and the engine is a 730 horsepower one, meaning that you can go forward pretty good, and also you don't have to worry too much, about getting out of dodge. It does also have quite a large back end, so that can actually soak quite a lot of shots if people screw up their shots instead of, shooting standardly, so that is also something to at least see. The other thing is the first stage ammo stowage is in the fuel tanks in the front, so that gives you extra survivability, which is really nice too. And the other thing is you get access to a 105 instead of a 100 or a 90mm or any of those things. And this 105, the Heat FS actually was quite nice on it. Like it served its job well until the APFSDS came along, which is the Type 83 APDS. Now this pen's 337, 284, 195, and generally that's fine to be able to use. And the other thing is, since it's 9.0, you miss out from that 10-3 bracket, which is where a lot of things get sucked into. So even in a full up tier, that APFSDS is good enough to be able to deal with anything that you'll fight, and that was actually really nice. The gun depression is absolutely horrific in this thing. It's only -4, but since it's quite a low profile vehicle, that wasn't too much of a problem. And also, at the same time, you have a 12.7 on the top, so you can at least go after, helicopters and things like that kind of come along as an additional thing. So what kind of sets this vehicle out compared to the rest of them that are stat at 9.0? What's the differences, really? Well, the major difference is the Upper Glacis. This thing isn't just a standard Type or T55 or Type 69 or that type of vehicle. They actually added a bunch of armor to its front. It has a 100mm rolled homogeneous armor piece. On top of that, there's a 20mm rolled homogeneous armor piece too, and then there's composite armor in the Upper Glacis too. So 20mm, 50, and then 100 under that. This means that the Upper Glacis is really powerful. You even have vehicles like the T72 with the decent rounds, like the 3BM42, that will just bounce off this Upper Glacis. So basically, you have to not shoot this thing in the Upper Glacis, which can be hard to remember because, you probably don't see this vehicle around that much. So just remember that when you see that weird Upper Glacis and also the turret. If you shoot the Upper Glacis, it will stop pretty much everything that comes into it, and then you'll be able to shoot back. There was many times in one-on-one engagements where people thought that they could just shoot straight through my hull, and then it would ricochet, and then they would just get hammered by the fact that I had a pretty good round on it. So just be a bit careful when you're facing this thing, because yeah, it'll just be an area which will randomly bounce shells, especially if you're at an angle without even realizing. The Upper Glacis Armor, even against like the 3BM 22, basically you have nearly 400 millimeters of protection. So sometimes you'll go through, sometimes you won't go through, and you got to be super careful in that situation. So that actually saved me quite a lot in one-on-one engagements. People just shooting center mass, hitting that, and not really going through. The other survivability stuff, though, is not really there on the vehicle. Like, obviously, it's nice having the ammo in the fuel tanks, you know, but the major problem with these vehicles is 3 of the crew are in a line. So if you shoot lower glacis for the driver, you're going to hit the gunner commander too, and it's just going to knock you out in one hit, and that's just kind of annoying. So it's still one of those vehicles you do have to, you know, shoot first. It also has the smoke grenade launchers, but one of the things I have to note is its reload is worse than pretty much everything else that's out there. The standard reload for the 105 when you are when you don't have any crew skills is 8.7 seconds. And you'll find this on a lot of vehicles. For example, the M60A3 TTS, which is also at this 90BR, it has the 105mm M68 cannon. It has an 8.7 second reload. The standard reload for the ZTZ88B and also A is 9.7 seconds. So you don't have as good reload as everybody else that's around the place. And the ZTZ89D1, which is at A3, has the same issue. It has a 9.7 second reload instead of an 8.7 second reload. And that sucks. And that means that you get out reloaded by everybody who has the same gun as you. And also, when you have other vehicles that have been tried to be balanced by giving them even better reloads, it just puts you in a pretty negative situation. So sometimes you have to rely on your armor, or rely, you know, on being able to sit more at the back to be able to grind out this thing, and that kind of sucks. One of the nice things about grinding it out, though, is it has laser rangefinder at rank 2. So you don't have to worry about trying to get to rank 4 or rank 3 to get the laser. Instead, you get it pretty early. So even from an early stage, you can snipe with this thing with the heat, and then eventually with the APFSDS. I'd actually say the mobility stuff is way more useful on this thing than the targeting speed stuff. I feel like the transmission on this thing has some pretty good low-end acceleration. So if you basically play it like you do a standard like Soviet or Chinese MBT, what you want to do while turning the turret is you want to turn the tracks with it, right? And that means that you can get the gun on target quicker. So if you focus on getting the engine, the transmission, and the tracks, and also the filters, before stuff like the horizontal and the elevation, I think you'll have a much better time, especially since this thing has the stabilizer to be able to rip around the gun. But I can't be mad about this vehicle. I thought it was a pretty standard experience, and the lineup around it, once again, is just insane. You know, you have the 2 ZTZs, then you have the M60A3 TTS, you have the PTL02, which is a super fun vehicle, the AFT09, which is also there, the T692G, and also the WMA301. Like, as a ground lineup, it really doesn't get better than that, especially since you can throw in the WZ305 and have a really good time with it. You are a little bit limited when it comes to air options, but you still have the H5 with the big bomb, and also you still, you know, can bring along stuff like the F84G with its bomb drops too, which can work out really well, and also the Q9 early, which even though it doesn't get the CCIP, you can still drop pretty accurately, you know, in the ground forces, which was something we did quite a few times. So I had a good time in this thing, I really did, and you know, it was a very standard MBT grind, but I didn't really feel pressured, and I didn't really feel like it let me down in any ways. And we went 31 battles, you know, 51 ground kills, 28 deaths, 61% win rate, which is pretty standard for a vehicle around 9.0, which doesn't have to deal with 10.3. I don't think it needs to go up in BR, it doesn't need to go down in BR, and it's just a nice, quaint vehicle before you get into the ZTZ, you know, 96s and later on. The other thing as well is, hopefully now, with more vehicles around that bracket, not just 9.0 or 9.3, it can entice people to play these types of things, because they are pretty fun. And also, with this, with the B and also the A is obviously half the price of the thing, so it's much easier to play now. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Tullio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pieman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Alan Hacker, Ozzy Panzer, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Cam Arslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.